Turn back graded the NBA's 5 biggest off-move trades midway through the year. Let's go.
Of the league, and of course, at the time each move set up the teams involved for a certain level of expectations. All-stars were flying around on the trade market, hoping to elevate their squads in their new homes, but now, as we reach the midway point of the NBA season, we have a pretty good picture of how each move has actually been working out. In today's video, we're going to be revisiting each of the 5 biggest trades from this past offseason, and we'll be grading how each team involved came away from the deal now that we have actually seen them in action with a decent sample size at our disposal. The trades we'll be going over were the ones headlined by Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, DeJounte Murray, Christian Wood, and Jeremy Grant. Before we start, though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now, with that being said, let's begin. The first trade we'll be grading today was between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Utah Jazz, where the Cavaliers received Donovan Mitchell in exchange for Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Ochai.
This was an A+ trade. Donovan Mitchell was balling out in Cleveland. Let's go. As you talk, let's look up the record.
3 first-round picks and 2 first-round pick swaps. Compared to a lot of the other trades we're going to be discussing today, this one was as close to a win-win as it gets, as both sides...
Honestly, the Jazz hooping too low-key. Because it's 14, no expectations, they're hooping. Well, in 9th place, but still. 5th place for the Cavs, they hooping.
Came away pretty well from the deal. Donovan Mitchell was unhappy in Utah, and now that he's in Cleveland, he has not only been playing the best basketball of his career, but he's also been helping the Cavaliers establish themselves as legitimate contenders in the East. The Cavaliers were a dominant defense already last season when healthy, but their biggest need was a dominant go-to scoring threat, and that is exactly what Mitchell has been providing, as he's averaging an efficient 29 points per game, while the Cavaliers also rank as the #1 defense in the NBA this season, so his presence has not at all hurt their defensive dominance, and if anything, he's more bought in on that end than he's ever been now. On the flip side, the Jazz were in a tough spot when their stars asked out.
I forgot this supposed to be the next D-Wade. That's supposed to be the next D-Wade, man. So you gotta have that defense.
But the reality has been that the players they acquired from these trades, led by Lauri Markkanen, have been unbelievable this year to help keep them afloat. Lauri Markkanen came out of nowhere, and now looks like an all-star in the making, scoring about 25 points per game, lighting it up both inside and out. Colin Sexton hasn't gotten fully back to the production he had prior to his injuries, but is still giving them a nice spark off the bench, and then they have an enormous chest of draft picks at their disposal to use to build their future, while developing these surprisingly good pieces. For the grades, I'm giving the Cavaliers an A and the Jazz an A+, because both have benefited tremendously. The next deal we'll be grading was between the Utah Jazz again and the Minnesota Timberwolves, where the Timberwolves received
this is a bad trade right here.
Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro
this is a bad trade.
and Walker Kessler, along with 4 first-round picks and a pick swap. When things fizzled out in Utah and their 2 best players became available, the market was hot for them, and Gobert ended up netting a pretty insane haul of assets for the Jazz, which, in hindsight, looks like robbery. The Timberwolves went all in for this move because, after taking a step forward last season by making the playoffs, they wanted to continue that momentum, and one of their needs, in theory, was something
I don't know what's going on in Minnesota.
Gobert is a 3-time winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award, so you see where their head was at with this. However, the actuality of the situation has been much bleaker, and this is now looking like not only one of the worst trades of the year, but one of the worst trades we've seen in a long time. The Timberwolves are currently in 9th place in the Western Conference standings with a record below 500. They are worse both offensively and defensively than they were last year, and the fit between their star players is incredibly awkward and clunky. A 2-center lineup in the year of 2023 was always destined to fail, especially when one of the...
I don't know why they... The thing, I don't know what... I never understood this trade. This trade was unexpected. It was just... didn't make no sense. Like, what was the purpose to get 2 centers? Like, honestly, should they even trade Cat? I feel like the whole team is just having a down year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know, bro. I think the whole squad is having a pretty down year in general. Like, I don't know. Like, Cat, he's good, but he's streaky at times. You know, he be good here and then he play okay. Rudy Gobert,
Towns
I guess
was
he's not
already a
really doing
liability on
anything.
defense. And now the assets that the team has at their
I don't know.
disposal is minimal because they gave it all away to Utah. It's not a total failure yet for the Timberwolves, but it's pretty darn close. So as for the grades, I'm giving the Timberwolves a D, and the Jazz an A+. The next trade we'll be regrading was between the Atlanta Hawks and the San Antonio Spurs, and in it the Hawks received DeJounte Murray,
the Hawks in
Jeff
ninth. It's kind of like a garbage trade, bro.
3 first-round picks and a first-round pick swap. The Hawks are another team that experienced a bit of success lately and used this past offseason as a way to bring in another star talent that they were hoping would progress themselves forward. But like the last trade we discussed, this one has actually yet to bear these fruits. If there's one thing that I think this past offseason will have accomplished, it's that it will scare teams away from this tactic of simply packaging all of their first-round picks in an offer for a star, because the amount of them that were thrown around this summer was pretty ridiculous, and now that a lot of the deals are backfiring, teams will be a lot more skeptical to give them up willy-nilly. DeJounte Murray broke out as an all-star in San Antonio last season because he was in a situation where he was in total control of the offense, and he stuffed the stat sheet on a nightly basis because everything ran through him. On the Hawks, he and Trae Young were going to have to share the ball handling and playmaking duties, which has led to a learning curve that is still a work in progress.
I mean, we got to give it time. First year.
Well off the ball,
I think sometimes when players get traded, I think sometimes we be expecting too much first year. Let them get warmed up, you know what I'm saying? Let them kind of grow chemistry then over time, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, we got to kind of let it.
Isn't a great perimeter shooter, so his off-ball impact hurts things even more, and the fact that the Hawks followed this move up by trading away one of their sharpshooters in Kevin Huerter hurt their spacing even more.
They traded Kevin Huerter?
There's no reason for a team led by Trae Young to be in the bottom third of the NBA in terms of offensive rating, but that's exactly where the Hawks rank right now, and as a team,
I didn't know they traded Huerter.
What the in the Eastern Conference standings, which is essentially no improvement at all from a year ago. The Spurs, on the other hand, got exactly what they needed.
Oh, 11 versus 11 gonna be nice. Two short players. Oh, that's gonna be lovely.
As those first-round picks.
What made Jalen Brunson get number 11 though?
And they probably weren't planning on paying DeJounte Murray big money anyway. For the grades here, the Hawks receive a C, and the Spurs receive a solid A-. The next trade we'll be grading was
the Christian Wood deal. No, Christian Wood, he does his thing, man. Christian Wood, whoa.
Between the Dallas Mavericks and the Houston Rockets, where the Mavericks received Christian Wood in exchange for Boban Marjanovic, Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, Sterling Brown, and Wendell Moore. This was one of the most underrated deals of the offseason that I think a lot of people slept on at the time, but looking back in hindsight, the Mavericks essentially traded away the players that were at the end of their bench in exchange for a dynamic offensive talent that has the skill set to operate very well alongside Luka Doncic. The biggest concerns at the time of the deal were about Wood's defense, because admittedly he had a pretty poor season on that end of the floor in Houston last season. But the Mavericks established a pretty strong defensive identity last year, and Wood has been more bought into his role, with more expectations being on him with the team around him than he's ever been. Wood and Luka have developed very strong chemistry this year, and in the pick and roll, Wood ranks in the 93rd percentile in conversion rate, making him one of the best roll men in the league, and he's doing so while also shooting the ball 40% from 3, so whether they're putting him in pick and roll action or pick and pop action, defenses have to respect him, which opens things up for Luka Doncic. For the Rockets, even though Wood only had 1 year left on his contract at the time, this trade looks pretty bad for them in hindsight. Not a single player they got back in the deal provides anything of significance, and they didn't even get a single pick back in the trade, which for a rebuilding team is baffling. The grades here are an A- for the Mavericks and a C- for the Rockets. And finally, the last big trade from the offseason will be grading.
The Mavs still not gonna do shit though, you know what I'm saying?
Blazers and the Detroit Pistons, and in it the Blazers received Jeremy Grant and a second-round selection.
Yeah, we talked about the Jeremy Grant pick.
A first-round pick and 3 second-round picks. This is honestly how the Christian Wood deal should have looked, because both Grant and Wood were in similar situations as productive forwards on rebuilding teams with expiring contracts that playoff
but I
contenders
mean,
went out
Grant
to
is on
acquire,
another
except the
rebuilding
Pistons did
team
the
though.
smart thing by asking for draft capital in exchange for his services. Grant has been having the best season of his career in Portland.
Yeah, I mean,
as
they're
he's
not making.
equaling his prior
Portland
career
might
high
make
of
it
22
play
points
in,
per
but
game,
I
but he's
don't know.
accomplishing that total
Like,
in a much more efficient manner by shooting
they're not going to
49% from the
finals.
field and a career best 43% from three. He, Damian Lillard, and Anthony Simons
Like,
have
Nurkic
formed
still
one of
hasn't
the most
really
productive
evolved yet.
scoring
You know what I'm saying?
trios
Like,
in the NBA.
when
And
is
even
Nurkic
though the
going to
team
really
is
fully
only
evolve? You know what I'm
hovering
saying?
around the play-in tournament range in the standings at the moment, they have shown glimpses of being able to compete with anyone. The grades here are favorable for both, as the Trailblazers get a B+, and the Pistons get a B, because neither necessarily nailed the trade, but both came away satisfied. With that being said, though, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these blockbuster trades in hindsight.
Which one y'all think is the best? Obviously, the Mitchell trade is the trade of the year. He's just killing over there. But the Grant, yeah, it was a good trade, I guess, but they still not going nowhere. They're not winning, so you know what I'm saying? It's gonna do a bit of like subscribe.